Welcome to the Gentleman Project Podcast. I'm Cory Moore.
I'm Kirk Chugg. Today we are privileged to have Ben Dodge on the program. Ben is an entrepreneur that thrives on adventure. He says every good thing in his life has come from some sort of adventure. And as I have watched him, he's a friend of mine. We've got a lot of things in common. And I've watched over the last 10 years as Ben has tackled every adventure ever put in front of him. And I watch in awe as he's accomplished some of the things you would think are humanly impossible. And so today, Ben's joining us on the podcast and also talking to us about his family and the things that he's learning as a father right now. So welcome, Ben Dodge. We're happy to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks, Kirk. Thanks, Cory. So you've been watching for 10 years. That's not creepy at all.
No, it's not, right? You can.
You're one of those, I watch, but I never comment or click. I get it. All right.
No, man, I comment and click.
You do.
I do. So Ben, adventure is part of your lifeblood, right? When did that start and how did that start?
I used to think it was about the year 2010 is when I used to think it started, because I was a little over 300 pounds and I did my first triathlon, and like a little fire kind of lit in me, and I was like, oh, I need to do this. But really, that can't even remotely be true. So my mom sent me an article from a local newspaper from back when I was like 13 or 14. And there was some, kind of backwoods wilderness survival competition that a bunch of teenagers did back in the day, probably through the Boy Scouting program, I think. And, zip lining and rock climbing and kayaking and, just a big deal all weekend, like a race, like an adventure race. And somehow I got written about in that article kind of a lot with pictures and stuff. And so, it was neat that she sent that. It's on my desk at work, but, and I go, wow, I guess I love this kind of thing from a long time ago. I just don't remember necessarily that well when it comes to childhood stuff, but maybe I'm just one of those guys that's hardwired that way. And I think I went through a phase where I kind of put it out, put it away. And that was, kind of some probably dark days, I would guess. I don't think I was super happy. I don't think anyone's happy with themselves if they're not in alignment with, the things that they believe, right? Or some purpose that they derive for themselves. And so, so then I got reconnected with that, I would say, in 2010 when I did a little triathlon, and that started a whole thing.
Yes. And if I was to read Ben's list of accomplishments, races that he's completed, you would go, people actually do this. They're epic races, right? Like biking across the continental United States nonstop, sailboating around, islands being caught in hurricanes, like this stuff. I'm actually looking forward to a couple stories today, and then how you've derived some of the lessons out of these stories that you're teaching your kids and the people that you lead in your businesses. Talk to us first a little bit about your family, and then we'll jump into some of those stories.
Yeah. So I'm a lucky man. I've married up. Not all men feel that way. So I feel blessed that I've married up. I've got a wonderful wife named Sonia. She's an Arizona native. I met her in Hawaii when I went to college, which was really just one of those things where I escaped, like my small hometown. And so college was it. At the time, no one in my family had ever really spent much time on a college campus. I think both my parents, my dad had done some night school at that time and was finally working towards a degree. And then I think my mom, when she was younger, did some community college stuff, So I came home from some missionary service in Austria, and I thought I gotta do something for myself. So I went to college. I had enough money for a one-way plane ticket. That was it. I had to kind of figure out the rest when I got that.
One-way plane tickets are the start of so many great stories.
Yeah. Because even the mission was like an adventure, right? I mean, I remember that farewell scene for those that don't know. And you go through one of these church missions back in the day, you have this little meeting and you say goodbye to your parents. And I was on the chairs running out because the aisles were full of people. Like there was just too many people. My mom was in tears trying to say goodbye and give me hugs. And I was like, I just need to go, like I got to get out of here. So anyway, so yeah, I met her in Hawaii. We dated for all of 6 weeks during a short summer session. And then she moved back to Arizona. Like she was just there kind of taking a break from her like organic chemistries and those pre-med kind of classes. Right. And so she was just there having fun. But then we dated long distance for the next, 5, 6, 7 months, something like that. Then we fell in love, got married, went to Arizona. Pretty much been here ever since, except for a little stint in Oregon where I went to some more school. We have one child. He's turning 13. Short story on him is he's very, very autistic. And we went through lots of, pregnancy help to try and have babies for the first 8 years of our marriage. So probably every medication and, procedure you could probably do is something we've either done or contemplated doing, trying to get pregnant. And then we were lucky. We finally got him. He came. And then within a year or two, he was diagnosed as severely autistic. And we were told to institutionalize him. He would never be able to control his body movements, or he wouldn't talk. He wouldn't, he would just basically grow up and just destroy everything. Is kind of what we were told. And, but now fast forward to now, he's about 13 and he's in a typical 6th grade classroom, not even a special needs classroom. Huh. And it's a struggle. I mean, it's a struggle. But he's there and he's doing well and he can talk, he can communicate, and he's my little champ. And I can't take credit. That's all Sonia. She invested the last 13 years of her life into making sure this kid has every opportunity to overcome this, So that's our family plus 4 dogs, because one apparently is not enough. So we have 4. We have a whole, I know they come in packs, but I call them my herd. I got a herd of dogs, and they're hilarious. They're fun. So.
Well, I think it would be interesting to people listening. There's a lot of people that go through the I can't get pregnant or I have miscarriages, which are brutal. Maybe talk about how that was and how you got through that, and what did you guys have to do mentally, or emotionally to, at that part, and then we can talk about your son some more.
Yeah. That's a lot harder, I think, for Sonia than it was for me, right? And I think as men, it might be hard to understand sometimes what our wives are going through when they go through some of those things. We kind of grow up thinking in these cultures that as men we're supposed to provide, and we're supposed to grow up and get good jobs and get good money and try and provide for kids. I think women often grow up with similar expectations. Women grow up with these, I think, expectations sometimes if it's their job, so to speak, to be able to have kids. That that's a natural, thing, really in alignment with nature of what their bodies are supposed to do. And when they can't, there's no words to describe the epic failure that they feel like inside, and shame and depression that often accompanies these miscarriages, and a body that doesn't function how they think it's supposed to. And so we dealt with that for quite a few years. I probably screwed that up a lot. I probably mishandled that as a husband. And then when we finally were able to have a baby, and he was diagnosed, that was a very, very sad thing for my wife to hear, right? Because it's not at all what she had expected or wanted or and so and not so many words, fought for so many years, right? And so that bit of news was a really dark kind of spiral that happened for our family, particularly for her, and that, I think, eventually I really messed that up. As the depression and sadness would last, I eventually kind of got a little bit tired of it, right? And hey, he's still an amazing kid and whatnot. And I don't think I handled that very well. If I could go back, change a lot of how I handled that. We've survived. I don't know how, probably to her credit, not mine, but we've survived. And we probably couldn't be any happier than we are right now. It's just a really good time in life for us, and we're just really pumped. But there were some moments, that weren't so good, where patience might have been short and devastation might have been high, sadness and all that stuff. So, yeah.
So what advice would you give other parents that are going through a similar situation?
I definitely would not give any advice to moms, because I think I screwed that up before. But to dads, no, I do have some advice for moms, but you got to be a little careful sometimes. Huh? But, with dads, I would say be really patient with your spouses, because you'll never know what it's like to not be able to have a baby. There's just no way you can ever know what that feels like, to not be able to do that. So the closest thing I can think in some of my, professional dealings with people that have gone through bankruptcy, right? These husbands and fathers feel broken and so ashamed that they have to file a bankruptcy and they can't provide for the family. And I think that's in the same realm maybe of this kind of thing, but it's only money. It's not like another life that you can't bring into this world. So I still don't think that we'll ever comprehend what they go through. And if you can know that and embrace that, then you might be a lot more, supportive and patient and loving and so forth. And I'm sure most of the listeners of this podcast are already that way. I had to learn that a little bit.
I don't know that the hosts are that way, so I think we can give our listeners a little credit of not being perfect. But this is an interesting thing, because I don't know of anybody who doesn't know someone or has been personally affected by infertility. It's all over the place. It's rampant, and I think most families have it in their families somewhere. And knowing how to talk about this and deal with this and say the right thing at the right time and not say the wrong thing at the wrong time it's so nuanced, because it's a very emotional topic. So thanks for sharing that experience that you and Sonia had, that struggle as you guys have struggled to have a family. What's your favorite thing to do with your son?
So it's a really good question. So like I was mentioning before, my life's an open book, right? There's nothing you guys can ask me that I wouldn't answer. And I hope I don't regret that, but there really isn't anything that I wouldn't answer. So this is a topic that's hard for me. So I literally thought when I was first married, I would be happiest with like 8 to 10 kids, just a whole mess of kids, just run around. And honestly, I don't think I could ever have survived a scenario with a bunch of kids. Turns out that sometimes kids are hard for me. Now with my son though, like it's like a two-sided coin. Like when he's younger and growing up and needs diaper changes and stuff like that. I mean, I had the worst gag reflex with just even the smell of some of those things, right? And so now don't get me wrong, I was there. I did it. I put suit up in an army helmet or whatever it takes, right, to get out there and get that done. But as he grows older, my favorite thing to do with him, it's been hard to find something that him and I can connect with. And as I've spoken with some of my friends that are dads over the last year or so, we've tried to be really intentional about this. Like, what can we do that is authentic, that we both like? Mm-hmm. Because I hate video games. I think this is the dumbest thing. In fact, and hopefully you guys aren't this way, so I apologize in advance, but adults that play video games, that's got to be the dumbest thing on this planet. And so kids that just go around and play video games all day, they're just wasting their life, right? That's show me a kid that plays video games all day. I'm going to show you a kid that's going to live with his parents when he's 30, guaranteed. And so,
how do you really feel about it though?
Yeah. I'm refraining as it is. So there's just so much in the world to see and do, right? Why video games do nothing for it? Anyways, so but my son, of course, like any 12 or 13-year-old kid, loves video games, and we don't own them. I just don't own video games in my household, except he has a phone so that we can get a hold of him, or he can get a hold of us in emergency if he starts to have some sort of, because he's got a lot of medical issues as well as autism. And so if he's at school, we got to be able to hear from him. So he's got like 1 or 2 games on his phone that his mother has allowed to be there, not his father. And
tell us how you really feel.
and the darn kid loves it, and he's so proud of it when he's doing it. He does something good. He wants to show me, right? He wants to tell me all about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like cringing inside, going, okay, great, So anyway, so I'm talking with my friends recently about, I got to find something that this kid likes that I like, so that we can go build real memories, and I'm not faking, some sort of happiness with something, because I think anytime you fake something, you're just a participation medal culture, right? And I don't believe in that either, And so I just started taking him around and exposing him to as many things as possible. So he has a need for speed. And I can't remember, it was a year or 2 ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, he had this little electric scooter thing that he saw one of the kids in the neighborhood, use, and he kind of had the courage to go try it and just loved it. And I think he totally biffed it the first time, but then he got up and did it again. Right. And I was like, awesome. I'll go to the hospital 10 times, before I sit around and like play video games with him. So because the Need for Speed, one of my favorite things is we now go dirt biking and these 4-wheelers. And I have a little side-by-side thing. I think they're called side-by-sides. I don't know. I'm not a huge.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, people are really into those things. It's whatever, give me a good deal on one, I'll go drive it. So I teach him how. So I taught him how to drive it. So we rip around in that thing. He drives his own quad and dirt bike, and we just go do that kind of thing. But you'll never see me with like a Monster drink and a trailer out at the dunes. Like I'm not that guy either, if that makes sense. But I'm out in the desert often with him, rolling around on these things because it beats wasting time doing something else.
Yeah.
The other thing recently I found out he likes is roller coasters. For therapy, when he was probably 7 or 8, even though we live in Arizona, we would go to Southern California for like 1 to 2 months at a time for some doctors and some other things. And so one of the therapy things we had to do when he was that young was take him to Disneyland for exposure to the sights and the sounds and how overwhelming and overstimulating that place is. I think even if your kids are typical, as a parent, Disneyland isn't always the happiest place on earth, right? Like it's kind of like a total miserable.
That's a really good marketing ploy to try to make it seem. Actually, Cory loves Disneyland.
Oh,
yeah, I love it. I like it.
Tell me you're not wearing those big ears too.
My wife loves the ears. She's into the ears and the T-shirts and the whole 9 yards. But it's beside the point.
Yeah, so we went there for quite a while. This one summer in particular, and it was just, we could maybe make it 60 minutes and we had to leave the park, and so I didn't really have any fond memories of that. But about a year or two ago, we went for some reason just to try it. And he just, he loved it. And every fast ride on the planet he wanted to do, he didn't care. He just never got scared. Right. And I totally embraced that no fear thing. I'm way with him on that. And so, so recently we did that. I ended up getting, I bit the bullet, ate crow because I hate that place, but we got an annual pass. And so now we pop over to Disneyland every once in a while and we just go hit all the rides like over and over again. And he just loves it, man. He just literally flat loves it. You cannot go too fast for that kid. You just can't.
So it sounds like he's got a little bit of Ben Dodge adventure blood.
He does. And I love it.
So tell us about some of the adventures you've been on, the lesson you've learned from that adventure, and how you're trying to teach that lesson to both your son and those that you coach.
Most of the adventures that I've done over the last handful of years, at least last like 4 or 5 years, have been a little on the extreme side from
a little
from I guess it depends on your perspective.
They seem pretty epic.
I've been called crazy, but honestly, Kirk, from my perspective, it's crazy not to do the things that I've been doing. Like it just would make no sense in this world if I didn't do it. So
he pauses because I think he's probably thinking about which adventure do I want to, because I'm looking at Ben and he has all of these medals across the back of his wall behind him, hanging gold medals, silver medals, these big, huge medallion medals of all of the epic things he's done. And he has 2 of my favorite poems hanging behind him, The Man in the Arena and Invictus. So if that tells you anything you need to know about the personality of Ben Dodge today.
Well, and then you've got the T-shirt that says "Underestimate Me." That'll be fun. It kind of goes together with this whole theme. So, but you're not letting him tell any of his stories.
I know, but everybody needs to know. He's probably just thinking a little bit about which adventure do I want to actually tell, because he probably doesn't have time to tell them all.
There's no way. There's no way to have time. But I guess the point would be, because we can go into some of them, but at least the last 4 or 5 years, they've been a little on the extreme side with like physical limits and endurance, and that's been super intentional. I try to be really intentional about everything I do, and that's definitely one of the things I've learned from adventuring. Is when you're intentional, you're far better off for success, and success even in the biggest failure, right? And so, but it's been intentional because only in those really, really dark moments where you think there's no way you can go another day. We're not talking activities where it's like another hour. It's like another couple days left of it or something, right? Mm-hmm. So, when you're so beat up and you're so exhausted and you're so broken that you don't think you can go any further, and you find the will to do that anyways, it's like you jump through a portal of self-awareness in a way where you can only learn things about yourself and about this world, I think, when you're kind of in that moment or in those moments. And so most of what I've done would be things like, some of it has been bicycle racing across the country though. So it's a 3,000 mile race. It's called Race Across America. And it's a nonstop race. You have to ride day and night. And I did it just about 2 years ago, I think, on a 2-man team, which was the hardest version of that I had done. We switched every 20 to 30 minutes. And so, we did it in 7.5 days. And that's every 20 minutes. So you're not sleeping ever, right? And that's because,
oh my goodness,
that's because my partner ended up getting a little injured. And so our sleeping plan after the first day went out the window. And I ended up getting pneumonia, and I was coughing up blood for like 3 days or 2 days across, I think, Missouri and Kansas. I got pictures of blood all over my bike. And our plan was to sleep 4 hours apiece at night. And the rest of the time you're riding, right? Just switching back and forth. So you're off the bike and you're getting something to eat, and you're, dumping ice down your drawers if it's hot or whatever you're doing, right? To just get back out on the bike and keep going. And so, you just get exhausted. You just get fully exhausted for not sleeping for that long. But we did that. We got second place. In fact, in the last 10 years in that particular race, our time would have been a first place, almost record-setting time. But we raced against some professional cyclists out of France, and we lost. Man, French team, dang it.
I think if you bike across America and you finish, you win.
Yeah, we lost.
Probably didn't feel that way, but to the rest of us, I think that's a win.
Yeah, and there's some dark moments in that race, as you can imagine, because you're allowed to stop if you want to and take breaks, but the race clock keeps going, right? And so, there's no reason to stop. And what's nice in that race is everybody's similarly situated with their mindsets. So you're surrounded by just total nut jobs, just like yourself, that want to be out there and embrace that kind of suck, right? They just want to embrace the suck. That's one of my Navy SEAL sayings that my friends have taught me. Embrace the suck. And so you just get out there and just deal with it, right? So other adventures have included things like I got a sailboat down in Mexico a handful of years ago. I bought it for just a couple $1,000. It was a 32-foot sailboat. And I drove down and I went to see it, and it was beautiful, right? I was like, this is amazing. It's 1968, 32-foot sailboat, had a little stainless steel barbecue on the back of it, mounted there. I'm like, this thing's amazing. I'm like, I'll buy it. So I bought it from this American guy. And I've never sailed a sailboat, by the way, in my life, but that's what YouTube's for. And so I learned how to sail on YouTube, taught myself how to sail it. And it just didn't really quite work out. So I spent a few months practicing down in Mexico. And then I had a couple of friends, and the three of us decided we're going to take it around Cabo San Lucas and up to San Diego. And then I'd try and sell it. But only the outside was beautiful. The inside was just a train wreck. It was just a totally bad boat. And so that was the year when California coastline got hit with some hurricanes and they lost a lot of their beaches. It was a handful of years ago. So that same time frame, I was out there on the coast of the Baja Strip, caught in some pretty bad weather. Our sails ripped, our motor died, and we were just stranded for a couple of days out at ocean, about 75 miles off the coast. We got rescued, and then we were stranded on this little Mexican fishing village for about a week before we could get back to the States. And that's just a fun, experience, really. It was really cool. We went around and did odds and end chores for these families that lived there, and they let us stay and fed us. And
you just hiked Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, so it could be mountain climbing. So I just did Kilimanjaro. That's a good little walk in Africa. It's a
good little walk.
It is. It is a good little walk.
I like these understatements.
Where does this come from? I know you said you like adventures, but but this is beyond, you're embracing the suck often is kind of what I'm hearing right here. And so where does that come from? Is that something that you had to teach yourself? You think it was inherent? You also said that you were a bigger guy at one time, and you're like this rep stud who's doing all these cool things now. What happened that changed your mindset and you said, I'm going to do these kind of things? Like, give me the psychology for yourself of the journey you've gone through.
Wow. So Cory, you get to the heart of it, don't you there? It's hard to describe that because I don't know that I've formulated it well enough in my own head. I get asked it enough that I should be able to formulate this. And this is the best that I can do and I think it's true. I mean, I'm going to put a caveat on this, but for the most part, I think this is true for everyone, which is why I like to share it and share these things, because I think it's adaptable and it's true for everyone. But I think we're all capable of so much more than we think we are. We have more potential and more capacity within us than we'll ever know. And if you accept that as true, then it's just a matter of exploring it. And when you start to explore that and you start to experience that, it's like switches start being turned on and you start, being more, doing more. Your capacity starts, shining, so to speak, in what you really can do. And it's still just a fraction, right? So for me, I started being willing to explore that, right, when I was so sick and tired of who I was. So I'd let myself get pretty big. I was a little over 300 pounds when I did my first Ironman triathlon. By the time the race, so I was 300 pounds when I signed up for it. By the time the race happened, I was like 265 or something. I mean, I was still huge. I was so tired of being that guy. I would be the first one to crack fat jokes because it hurt less if I made the fat joke about myself than somebody else did, right? I was so sick and tired of just being average and just being content with what I had. I was so tired of the world happening to me and me just being okay with it. And I decided I needed to start happening to the world, right? I need to move through this world and happen to it as opposed to the other way around. And it's just a simple mindset shift for me back then of going, if I can be intentional about things, then I can create around me whatever I want. And I think as people, we're creators. You in particular are going to have a probably special relationship with this as a construction guy, but you literally and physically create stuff, through your job. But I think emotionally, we can create just like that, just very real, tangible, almost lifestyles and cultures and mindsets we can all create. And that is like one of my favorite principles, is that we're creators and we can go and create what we want. In fact, you're always creating. In your inaction and your lack of decisions, you're creating something. It's just not very pretty. Yeah. And so I love that concept. So for me, exploring that endless capacity or that thing the Navy SEALs often say, you can do 20 times what you think you can do. You're 20 times more capable than what you think you are, is one of their sayings. And so I was finally willing to explore that and experience that. And when you do, it's like a drug. But I wasn't willing to do that until I finally was so unhappy with where I was that I wanted to do something else. So the catalyst, to answer your question, for me was probably my own disdain for myself and my own desire to want more, not just a negative approach. I think I had a positive approach too. Like, I want more out of this life. I just wanted more. I wasn't going to just sit here and take it like this in the shorts, I wanted to do something. And so my friend invited me. I had a neighborhood friend that said, hey, let's go do this triathlon. I was like, what's that? And he's like, well, you swim a little bit and then you go and you bike. And then it was a sprint triathlon. I don't know if you're familiar with triathlons, you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the listeners out there, it's a sprint triathlon, and that's the shortest, easiest one you could do. I was definitely over 300 pounds when I did that one. I thought I was going to drown in this little 400-meter swim. It was only 400 meters. It's nothing, right? And then the bike was only like 22 or 25 miles long, and the run was just a 5K. So it's 3.1 miles of a run. It was not a run for me. It was a total walk every step of the way. But I crossed that finish line, and I started to experience what I was capable of. Now, before I crossed that finish line, in the days, weeks, months leading up to that, I would never have guessed I could have even done something like that. And why would a big fat guy be out there, right? Like, he doesn't belong there. It's like a fish out of water. And so I started to experience this. I can do more than I think I can do. And I should say I started to re-experience this because growing up and in the early days of college and marriage, you know, it was all this kind of, you know, adventuring and pushing limits and so forth. But somehow I got content when I got married and just kind of let off the gas. And I think a lot of guys do that. I think a lot of girls do that. You know, and I think they get to a point where we just kind of go, hey, I made it. I finally graduated college, for example, or I finally got married or whatever. I finally had my second, third, fourth kid, whatever it is. And they just kind of say, I'm going to just, you know, I'm just going to live. I'm going to let off the gas. And I think it's okay to be content, by the way. You know, I'm not faulting anybody for just saying, I'm fine with what I've got and that's all I want and I'm happy. Okay. But I still believe that person is living under their capacity and underneath their potential. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. I love this, what you've told us. I think it's going to be super helpful for lots of listeners, myself included. But I think most people wouldn't do these things because of a fear to fail. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so what do you tell people when you can tell they're just afraid to fail? They're afraid that they're afraid they won't be able to cross that finish line. Number one, fear to fail. Address how you talk to people about that. And then two, are there any that you failed and what was your lesson learned on those? Or you see what I'm saying? Because I think answering both those questions might help people to like push forward in their life to be more than they thought they could be.
I can guarantee you something. I have failed and will fail more than I'll ever succeed. Hands down, guaranteed. And fear of failure is a real deal, just like fear of missing out, the whole FOMO thing. Right. Fear of failure is a real deal. And people sometimes don't even want to admit it. You should talk to some of these guys. It's funny how they say everything except they're afraid to fail. They have all these justifications and excuses to why they're not doing something. But if they're being authentic, it's hard to get people to always be authentic with you, right? Like that's a real thing. But then it boils down to people just being afraid to fail. And it almost drives me crazy. And this is where I got to work on my own patience because I see them in a different light than they see themselves. I'm like, I just wish you could see you through my eyes. You would see that you could do so much more. And you're sitting here telling me all these lame excuses as to why you can't or you shouldn't or, you know, whatever. And I'm just like, so I think it's very person specific. But one of the principles that helps me help people that feel that way, my son included, is to try and help them, one, see themselves from from some other perspective. And that almost never works, right? It almost never works. So then I have a really frank conversation after I fail at doing that with them, right? Then I have a conversation with them about, and this hurts and it stings, but you just don't want it bad enough. It's easy to do the things you want to do. If you really want to do this, then you'll do it. And you don't want to bad enough right now. In fact, you want to be afraid more than you want to succeed. You want to be afraid more than you want to succeed. And it just hurts to hear, but it comes down to that. Or you don't hate what your current circumstances enough. If you take a big look in the mirror and you're not happy with your job, you're not happy with your relationship with your spouse or your kids, or you're not happy with the amount of money you make, you're not happy with a car you're driving, I don't care what it is, materialistic, emotional, spiritual, whatever, you're not happy with it, then do something about it. Like you could totally make a choice and be intentional and change that. You can create, right? We're all creators. So create something differently. And that doesn't happen overnight. I think that's the other problem our culture has in this particular country is that, you know, I've been to a lot of this world, but in this country, everything's so instant, so fast food related, right? I push a button, I get it. I can stream something right now. I can open my email right now. I can, and if not, just watch the frustration rise in the corporate world if they, for some reason, lose connectivity for just a second, right? Or, you know, so it's funny. And so that instant gratification is another label we've probably heard a lot that describes the same thing, but success doesn't happen so instantly. And so you can take choices to, you know, on a choice by choice basis, and you can create on a choice by choice basis, and you can have success over time. And so what failures have I experienced? I mean, the sailboat's one of them. Teaching myself how to sail on YouTube was probably a little bit bold in the sense of how my success may have never turned out. You know, I don't know, but eventually it worked. Eventually I hired a Mexican guy that lived there, a local guy that he was a sailboat captain to show me a few things too for a day. Funny story is by the end of it, he actually printed a little certificate. He went back to his house, printed a certificate that said I was also a captain, just for spending one day with him. So I made my friends call me captain evermore after that on that trip.
Nice.
But, but I totally failed. I mean, totally, utterly failed. We made it about halfway. Our boat was virtually sinking on more than one occasion. We were totally stuck dead in the water for a couple of days out there before we could get rescued. I mean, it was bad. In spite of all that, that was one of my most fondest memories now. And the boat ended up getting destroyed. A hurricane picked it up because we got back to safely to the shore. But, within a short period of time, the hurricane picked it up off the shore and shredded it. Just cast it like a half mile up into town and just shredded it along the beach. So, we were very, very fortunate. But one of the things, there's many, many things there, but in that particular instance, one of the things I learned is if you're so prepared, even a failure is not going to throw you off, right? So there was a lot out of my control on that trip. Like I can't control the weather, but we had satellite communication. We had a lifeboat. We had, a couple weeks worth of like food rations and water. And so, we weren't really as scared as we ought to have been, probably, honestly. We probably should have been a lot more scared than we were.
75 miles of water is a lot of water.
Yeah, dude. And when you're down there, by the way, honestly, so we have a little tiny motor. The sailboats all have a little bit of motor so that you can park them. Otherwise, you can't park them, right? You can sail up to a marina, and then you've got to be able to like put the sails down and actually maneuver the boat into a parking slip, right? And so it has this little motor, and we're trying to get our way back to shore, at least with this little motor, and it breaks. And so we're 75 miles off the coast, and one of us has to go down under the boat and check it out. And you're in the middle of nowhere, right? I mean, there's no reason on earth you're not thinking about the Jaws movie when you're about to jump overboard, right? Like in the middle of nowhere. And I was the unlucky one, drew the short straw and had to do that. But yeah, so even if you're prepared though in these failures, like you can still, in other words, we had success in the sense that we didn't drown, we didn't die. We were rescued. We had the means to get rescued with some communication. So it took a while, but we were able to salvage that. And so one of the things that I'd still do is I just over prepare for every adventure I have. If you have one of something, you have none. If you have two,
one is none.
If you have two, you have one. One is none and two is one. So, very much so still live that way with things for sure.
Ben, do you have any books or mentors that have been game changers in your life as far as developing this mindset to kind of shift gears or look at things through a different lens?
Yes, I have a shelf full of them.
I assumed you did. So I'm going to ask you, which ones are like your top one or two?
Just off the cuff without looking at my shelf right now, because it's at my other office. I would say one of the best books I think people can read if you can stomach, a little bit of language every once in a while. It's David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. Classic. His perspective on things and his perspective on grit and pushing through, and it doesn't matter how bad life deals you a hand, like you can do. Plus, you can do more than you think you can do. I think he lives that, and he exemplifies that. So that's a book that I've asked all of my staff and employees to read as well. Part of our bonus program for our employees is to read one of these books a month and then do a little summary for it, and then they get paid for doing that. So that was one of the, I think I might have been the first one asked to read, actually. Yeah.
Cool. I didn't hesitate in asking you the question about which books have influenced you, because I can tell by talking to you and the things that you've done that you read. Most successful people read. You're essentially taking someone's whole life experience and everything they've learned, the most important things that have led to their success, and they're downloading it to you in 150 pages.
Yeah.
Like, why would I not read that?
Yeah, I'm working on one. I've been asked a few times to write a book, and I'll tell you, that is a struggle I have, to feel worthy enough to do so, right? To feel like I can contribute something that's different that somebody else would benefit from. Oddly is a struggle for me. And I've been dragging my feet, and it's happening.
I'm calling you on that because you're afraid to fail more than you want it.
It's true. It's true. It's a real struggle, right?
I'm calling Ben Dodge on something, everybody.
Yeah, let's edit this part out. I'm just kidding.
It's never gonna happen again.
Well, I think it's gonna be a great book, man. You need to see yourself. You need to see ourselves from our eyes right now.
Yeah,
it's gonna be epic. It's gonna be epic.
It's a good example, though, of how no matter what we've been through, we still all struggle with some of these things, right? You still have to wake up every day and make certain choices to be a certain kind of way and to live a certain kind of life.
100%.
And if you don't make those choices, then you're actually choosing something inadvertently that you definitely won't like.
You're you today.
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself, the guy who said, well, I guess I'll run this triathlon? Like, what would you tell him? However many years ago that was now, like, you're a different person. You've had so many adventures since that guy, right? What would you tell him? Like, what would your advice be to him?
So if I could be Marty McFly and jump in a time machine, right?
Exactly.
I would tell my younger self that I can do a lot more than I think I can do, and to go try that at a lot earlier phase. Because I probably missed out on 10 years of growth, 10 years of experiences. I lost probably a decade of my life I can never get back again. Whereas if you go backwards for me now, like, I feel like I've lived, 4 or 5 lives, right? Like, it's awesome. Just the amount of things I've been able to do and experience. I don't use the word accomplish because I feel like it's, it sets a false expectation of winning or something, because a lot of my experiences where I felt like I was winning in life were failures. And so I like to use the word, what you're able to experience or things you're able to do. I have won a lot of things, but I failed a lot more than I'll ever win. And so anyways, I'd tell my younger self, hey man, you can do way more than you think you can. And now go try that. Just see what that feels like to do more than you think you can. When you want to quit, just tell yourself no. Much like we tell our kids to try and decide things beforehand, like if they're going to be offered drugs or alcohol or pornography or something, you're like, hey, decide now how you're going to handle that, right? Well, I'd tell myself, decide now how you're going to handle it when you just don't want to take one more step or pedal that bike one more day or night, or, I'd say just decide now and then go experience that. Because once I experienced it, it was just a phenomenon of things just clicking and light switches turning on, right? And I think that's what most people feel when they start to accomplish something. I shouldn't say accomplish, experience something, bigger than themselves when they didn't think they could.
That's cool. Well, I think that's important for me, for listeners. It's not just physical, right? It could be trying a new business that you didn't
absolutely, yeah.
It could be learning a new language. It could be being a better husband. It could be being a better parent.
Absolutely.
Deciding to be spiritual. You name it. There's like 1,000 things where you could say, well, and I like what you put there. Like, best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time's today.
That's it.
So do it, because otherwise you're going to regret even more time passed.
There's a confidence and I'm sure you guys know that there's a difference, right, between confidence and self-esteem, but there's a confidence and a self-esteem phenomenon that happens when you experience something bigger than yourself and you think you could. And that's priceless. And I think that's universal. I'm not the only guy that does these kind of things. And so, you end up building a culture around you of other people that are this way. And I'm learning from them and vice versa. And it's just, I know that happens, but people are so afraid of failing or whatever it is, like we talked about earlier, that they don't take that first step, right? They're in their own inaction is just killing their lives, and they just get in this rut of contentment. And it doesn't have to be a marathon or some epic physical thing, like you said, right? And so, for me, I went into this Cory program. It's a Navy SEAL Hell Week program where you can go do Hell Week with the Navy SEALs, and you can qualify and go. And so I went, and I was one of the oldest guys there, and I went going, believing that I can accomplish, I'll use that word this time on purpose, but I went believing that I can accomplish anything I wanted to. I came out of that experience knowing I could. And that was a huge, huge difference. Probably the single most powerful time period of my life in terms of foundation and kind of prepping me for just doing a lot of things was probably my mission. I say probably because this like 3.5 to 5 day experience with the SEALs was just as powerful or more powerful in terms of what it set me up to do and allowed me to do, you know, and it turned things on in my mind that can never go dark again. Right. And so, you know, now all of a sudden, within a few months of that, I was doing 1,000-mile solo race on a bike from California to Colorado. I just prepped for a couple months is all. I was like, I got this. And so I went and I started racing because I like, hey, I can do anything I want now. I know I can. I can suffer through anything. I'm 400 miles into this thing. I'm like halfway through and my neck gives out. My head flops down. It's on YouTube. My head flops down. I can't even hold my head up anymore because the pain is so bad. The neck muscles are so gone because I was an idiot that didn't prepare appropriately, right? I was super ignorant of the race and I just thought I could just go do it. And so we taped my head actually to some towels that we put underneath my chin to hold my head up. And then we taped my head to these towels. And I finished the next 500 miles on that way the next couple of days, just because I didn't have the strength to hold my own head up anymore because I was so unprepared. And I've since done a lot longer, harder events, but that one will for sure always be probably the hardest thing I've ever done just because I was, you know, kind of an idiot. But Kokoro helped me understand that it doesn't matter. Like you could do so much more than you think you could do.
Well, I could keep talking to you for a couple more hours, but I'll let you go.
I told you Ben was going to be a good interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't tell me that. He's like, hey, he sends me this message like, hey, we had these 10 other guys that bailed, man. Do you think you're
no,
like our 11th
pick?
Do you think
Cory has known me long enough to know that would not happen.
That was some total bullshit.
And we have a pretty high standard for people that we invite on the podcast.
We ask every guest at the end of the podcast to tell us what it means to be a gentleman to them. So what does it mean to you when you hear to be a gentleman? What does that mean to you?
Well, I'll say this. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it's going to definitely be context driven. Give me a different context. I'll have a different answer every time, right? In terms of the scenario and the circumstances and the room you're in and what you're doing. That being said, I can't help but think my version of a gentleman is more than just chivalry and all those wonderfully good things. It's, for me, a gentleman, and it's a lost art, right? But for me, a gentleman is somebody who knows what they believe in and they have something to stand for and they stand for it. They have grit, they have determination. They don't surrender to anything, you know, and they live a life of authenticity, you know. They're authentic to what they believe in and what they're trying to do and accomplish. And they're happening to the world as opposed to the world happening to them.
A 45-minute podcast is definitely not long enough to hear all of the epic adventures. And I love listening to you talk. And I love the mindset that you bring. So thank you for joining us. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, who is Ben Dodge? I've never heard of him before. How do they connect with you if they want to, one, they're going to buy your book someday. And two, sure. Ben also, he's a successful entrepreneur that he has a law degree, has several law practices. He speaks, he coaches, does several other things, true entrepreneur. But part of that is you can hire Ben to come in and speak to your company about this mindset and how you overcome these self-limiting beliefs. So how do they connect with you if they want more Ben Dodge?
There's a website that's launching any day now. It's benldodge.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Gentleman Project podcast today. Thanks, Ben Dodge, for taking the time out of your day to spend with us and share with us some of these important messages. Hopefully you connect with Ben and watch some of the great things he does. Watch for his upcoming book, title Yet to Be Determined. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Cory Moore. Make things happen to the world. Don't let the world make things happen to you. Thanks, everybody.